right, Viviano, Brandon, hey, congratulations on your new film, Scared Shitless.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
You
having me.
know, it's funny. I was kind of reluctant to cover this film because I was going, why would I want to cover a film about, poop or a poop monster? But then, finally saw the film and was going, this is delightfully very, very funny.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that was always a fear that people would misunderstand the film, but at the same time, the title is so good, it's engaging. So you're gonna tune in. And as long as we follow our end of it, we know people once they get in there, they're gonna be happy with the movie. So yeah, that's a real treat to hear.
Very, very much so. So, Brandon, toss it to you where the original idea came from for Scared Shitless.
Well, it really goes back to my days of working in construction, and I was always afraid to use the porta potty. There were animals that would come onto this construction site, so I was always fearful that an animal would sneak into the porta potty, and then when I would sit down, something would come up and bite me. That never happened, but it was always a fear. And my producing partner Lewis was in film school at the time, and almost 15 years later, here we are. We've made our movie.
Viviano, in a film like this, how did you want to approach this film, particularly with the creature feature?
Um, it basically, sorry, there's sirens here. I don't know what's going on, but I always like passing the absurd as the norm, so to speak, having an insane situation and grounding it almost in real life, like as if like this could happen in our world. And and I think it's that grounded approach that makes it relatable to the characters, to the situation, and you can see a little bit of yourselves up there. And that's something I've always done with everything. A lot of that was already inherent in the script. Um, Especially with the dynamic with the father and son and such. So, I think it's more to say that's why it was like a perfect fit. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. And it's also, about letting our cast kind of be themselves and bring a little bit of themselves, into those characters, there's genuinely, I think, a piece of Stephen and Og and Chelsea in all of those characters. And so that kind of earnest, that kind of genuine, you know, uh kind of reaction really comes across.
Yes, absolutely. And Brandon, speaking of characters, tell us how you wanted to craft these characters with so much eccentricities, which every single one of them.
Yeah, I think they brought that aspect themselves, the actors, to some of the characters. But a lot of it again goes back to construction. There were a lot of father-son crews when I was working construction, and I always paid attention to them and their dynamics. And I thought, oh, this is such a these are great characters. A lot of great characters on the construction site. So yeah, we made the movie with the father and son plumbing crew, which was very common where I was working. And you know the, a lot of it kind of writes itself with those type of characters. So those were the main characters, and then the other people, the other characters in the film. Yeah, it was this small kind of microcosm in the building, and these own little stories popped up with these crazy characters. And I think that's very true too. If you live in an apartment building, there's a lot of characters as well. You have you never know what your neighbor's up to.
That is very true. Viviano, speaking of characters, tell us about the star of the film, this creature.
Hmm.
How did you come up with the concept? Obviously, it has to be like a worm-like creature in order to go through the pipes, but tell us about, coming up with that look of the creature.
Well, the truth is, they Brandon and Lewis had did a short version as a proof of concept some years back. So a lot of that worm was based off of that. And then it's just, us having conversations with Steve Kostansky and essentially, what we would do and how some of the kills would look and, crafting kind of those set pieces and, adapting the creature kind of beforehand kind of to kind of suit what would be a cool kill and different things and stuff like that because we know we'll want the creature to growl and see the the mandibles, what's going to look like inside, and so it's a real kind of collaborative effort on that thing. It's and Steve definitely put his own stamp on that.
Brandon, can you add on to that since that was an original concept with you? I mean, that's kind of a crazy concept of that's how kind of an animal that you would think would come through a porta potty.
Yeah, I think there were definitely influences from movies that we'd watched growing up. John Carpenter's The Thing, um, Tremors, Gremlins, even though that's different, but yeah, it had to be functional. It did need to be something that would be able to contract and go into the pipes and then come out and attack. So a lot of it had to do with what type of creature, what would it look like, how would it actually function if this were an actual creature in real life. And I would tell friends about this movie, and then people would send me articles of a snake coming out of the toilet in like Australia, like these news stories that were true stories that would go viral. So we kind of pieced a couple of these things together, and what you see is what we made, and that's it.
Well, it certainly is terrifying. Viviano, how many of these puppet creatures did you end up using for the production?
Quite a few if you count every single puppet, up in, double digits of sorts. But I think there was about 3 to 4 main ones that we used. One were a hand puppet, one was on sticks. There was a couple that were just kind of free and foam that you can, and one that we can attach onto a head. So yeah, I would say I think there was about 4 altogether of the main larger ones. And the little baby ones and the things like I guess those don't necessarily count, but they are puppets. So there's quite a few, quite a few.
I'm curious on the production, what did you guys call the creature? Because I keep on calling it the creature.
Ha, I think Brandon, did we had something in an earlier pass or something? There was a joke about giving it a name, and then it just never made it through. But I know there was something that I had pitched in that on in the latter end, but there was many drafts, so I don't know before that if Brandon had something.
Yeah, there was a name. There was something in Italian that we were
Oh,
called something gabinetto. I think is toilet or something. So, but it was something. Yeah, maybe gabinetto mostro, like the monster.
oh no way. That's awesome. That's funny.
So
I
that
because I remember I think what I wanted was it like a plane, like thinking that it was going to be that, and then when Dr. Robert and he would just say like it's the most terrifying like creature on the face of the earth, and her name is Debbie or something
yeah,
stupid
yeah,
like
right,
that.
right. I remember
But
that one.
yeah, it didn't fit in the that scene is already out of all the scenes, it is the most maudlin, and then that was just kind of taking it to a level that just was a little much, right? That like so yeah, it is a bit of a balance and tone of sorts, even in the absurd moments. But uh, but yeah, I think both of those are quite funny.
And Brandon, script writing humor into a film is actually very difficult. So tell us about, the so-called dad jokes and toilet jokes that you have to put in, and do you feel bad for putting it into the film?
No, I think I just I didn't even think so much about writing jokes in there. I wanted to keep it so natural to the characters and these guys that I used to work with on the construction site, and how they would talk, and you know, how I would be with them on the site. And yeah, I tried, you know, I had that tone, that the way they were, the bravado, you know, in my mind when I was writing these guys. So it came kind of naturally. Just yeah.
Viviano, let me toss the last question to you. As a director, for a film like Scared Shitless, you definitely use practical, and I notice a little bit of CGI in there. And I like to ask, any horror director, all horror directors about, because there's always that ongoing debate between practical versus CGI. Tell us about your side on and perspective on things.
Uh, I really like the practical stuff. Just because you're being like there's pros and cons to both sides, but with the practical, at least something that's tangible, it's there on set, an actor can interact with it, and you know what you're getting. Um, with the CG stuff, you can tend to futz with it, until like, and you don't really have like a real true vision. It just kind of keeps you're building on it, building on it, building on it, so to speak. But I think at all point, yeah, if you can do practical, I think that's always like for me, that's always the fun thing. Um, because it just looks real on set, and it is there's a warmth to it. There is a you have a bit more of a license. When it's bad CG, it's just bad CG. Uh, um, but there's something about the charm that practical effects have that lends itself to the tone of the film that we make. Um, yeah, that is just like a perfect fit. And that I think it's the only way to go. And at all costs, it's just I think practical is it's just a real art form. Well, not that CG isn't, but it's just a different art form, and it's just a little more old school fundamental filmmaking, and I'm sentimental for that.
Well said. Well, Scared Shitless is a very funny film, and thank you, you guys, for speaking to us about the film. And I'm gonna have to think twice about if my toilet ever gets clogged to see what comes out of it. I'm fearful of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.